1, a 2, a 1.
It's time for the Better Horses radio show. So let's saddle up and ride as we explore the Western way of life, horses and cows, family and friends, a relationship with the land, and a relationship with God. It's all here on Better Horses Radio. Now let's hit the trails with the Better Horses team.
Welcome to Better Horses Radio. We're the team. I'm Ed Adams.
And I'm Merle Arbo.
And you know, Merle, this is going to be an exciting episode. And I got to be honest with you. We kind of set this episode up for a reason. Because we have three professionals coming on board. And they're going to be talking about barrel racing, team roping, and mounted shooting. And do you know why we lined this up?
No, I don't.
Because I've got to head over to the Flint Hills, and on an invitational, I've got to literally do the Cowboy Challenge over there with Rex Buckman at the Bar U Ranch. And I figured, okay, why don't I get three really big professionals here to teach us everything we need to know, and I should be a shoe-in.
So this is essentially a cowboy cramming for the exam?
Yeah, it's kind of like you didn't study, and now here comes the test. Yeah, that's pretty much what we're doing. So, all right, coming up in this episode, we're going to have Jena Bean. She's going to be a barrel racer. She's a three-time NFL qualifier from Hancock, Texas, and she's going to teach us all about speed events and exactly how she got into it. And I tell you, Merle, this is going to be exciting to listen to her.
Yes, it is. You know, I'm also looking forward to talking to Ryan Motes. You know, he's a professional cowboy and been to the NFR, and his lineage, his family lineage is absolutely amazing. I mean, his grandpa and his dad were great stock contractors and ropers. And so it's very interesting looking forward to talking to him. You know,
5-time NFR rodeo qualifier, and he is a healer, and he also teamed up with Coleman Proctor. We had him on our previous episodes. We're going to really look forward to talking to him and about his world record that he's also holding. And then at the end, Dee Chapman, professional world champion mounted shooting expert. She's going to basically ride through this exciting sport, and it's a timed event, and we're going to really deep dive into cowboy mounted shooting.
That'll be great. I'm looking forward to this episode.
You know, and I got to tell you, a lot of people are getting confused. This is Better Horses that you're listening to, but there are some times that we also refer to Better Cattle. And what better way to get Mark Opel to kind of walk it through and give us an update on what's going on in the cattle market. Mark?
Well, thank you very much, Ed. Great to be part of the program here once again. And I don't know what's tougher to make heads or tails and better cattle, or heads or tails and better horses and better horsemanship. But we're going to give it a shot here as far as this cattle market is concerned as we move into mid-September right here. I want to start today by looking at these weights. We've talked about this before, but I think it really kind of hangs over this market. The market knows that those extra pounds are out there. The average weight of the of slaughter cattle here this last week, 849 pounds. And that compares to 847 pounds the previous week. Now, that doesn't sound like a big difference, and it isn't, except when you look at a year ago, the average weight was down at 825 pounds. So there you go. You're full, but 25 pounds more every animal carrying that weight this year compared to a year ago. And you say, well, that's such a year ago. What about the big picture? Well, the big picture is the same. The 5-year average for early September is 825 pounds. So still 24 pounds above the 5-year average here. So then you look at, and I'm just going to average here, a slaughter on a weekly basis would be somewhere 600, 605,000, 608,000 head. While you take over 600,000 head and add 24 pounds per animal, then you can see all this beef that's, I don't want to use the word backing up, but certainly going to be hard to move that much product here with consumers that are looking at that food dollar more than ever and stretch and stretch and stretch. So again, I think that weight has to come down. Producers just feeding this again less expensive grain and to these cattle and putting them out further. Now, as far as the futures are concerned, looking at the live cattle futures are, first of all, 179.12 had been a high late in August, and the market, this is December live cattle, had kind of battled to get to that point. They did get over it here last week, but I think the key is to get over that and stay over it would be a real key. To watch that number like 179.12, 179.20 on December live cattle. Pretty good low and support would be around 175, 175.45. Now looking at the October feeder cattle in here, 240.10 would be the next level up. Again, to get over that and stay over it, 138. First things first, 138, and then that 140 level or 240 level would certainly be available for October cattle. Support down there this week, taking a look at this number at 235 in our view, 235.30. And you know what? Even though we're talking about better cattle, I'm looking at that hog trade, so there is potential for a move higher in here when you look at hogs. The last 2 weeks, over that 2-week period, 8 days in a row, the December hog contract made a new high. And they even went over that 200-day moving average. And those who watch futures, a 200-day moving average is huge, and the December live hogs did go over that here last week. So keeping an eye that there is potential for the livestock trade to move higher in here. Hopefully that's helpful as we all look toward better cattle. I'm Mark Oppold, wishing you a profitable week ahead.
And see, that's how exactly it is explained. We got Mark Oppold talking about better cattle. You and I are going to talk about better horses, Merle, so that nobody stays confused.
Yeah. Well, and we kind of sprinkle some stuff in too. I don't know if you knew, but in the roping, you got to catch a cow. Yeah.
You do. Hey, you know what? We want to finish this segment up with a horse tip of the week, and we'd like to go to Matt Jobe. Matt?
Howdy, folks. I'm Matt Jobe. So today's horse tip comes to you in the form of 2 questions. Question number 1, how many hours a week do you spend riding your horse? I typically get a lot of different answers, but they typically range from 1 hour, 2 hours, 5 hours. Second question, how many hours a week do you spend around your horse, taking care of your horse, not riding? Typically that answer is anywhere from 2 hours, 4 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours. Between mucking stalls, cleaning hooves, giving them bath. So the majority of folks spend more time with their horse than they do actually riding their horse. So my challenge for you today is utilize that time and make a better horse. There's so many things you can do, like leading them out to your paddocks. You can spend time, help them learn to walk, help them learn to trot, help them to back up, help them to learn some patience, not be pushing on you. Stop, stand still. So a lot of stuff you can do right there. Teach them to pick up their hooves better. Teach them to stand patiently doing so. Get them ready for the farrier. Sometimes they're food aggressive. I like to take a stick in there with me and just show it to them and say, hey, stay back. And most of the time they will. After I pour their feed in, I give them a few seconds, then I step out of the way and say, hey, you may eat. And after I do that a few days, normally the horse no longer charges in there. He learns some patience, learns some manners. So that's your tip for today. Utilize your time not riding to build a better horse. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.
And that was our horse tip of the week with Matt Jobe, professional horse trainer. Hey, you know what, Merle? We got a really exciting show, but we want to take a break and appreciate a word from our sponsors. I'm going to tell everybody, stay with us. We're going to have more better horses coming your way. I'm Ed Adams.
And I'm Merle Arbo.
And we'll be right back right after these messages.
Get quality you can stand on. Hoof Grip is the proprietary formula that provides shock absorption for your animals with no ice buildup, slipping, cracking, or sogginess, making it the safest, most comfortable, and maintenance-free flooring on the market. Hoof Grip installs quickly and easily over existing surfaces, is easy to clean, and withstands extreme heat or cold. From vet offices to barns, wash racks to trailers and more. Visit hoofgrip.com to find a dealer in your area today.
We're here for the hardworking, the resilient. We're for the people who measure their days by what needs to get done, not by hours. Where kids learn responsibility at a young age and generations work side by side. where work doesn't pause for holidays or bad weather. It just gets harder. Where value and hard work means more than the clothes you wear. We're Kleinschmidt's Western Store, Higginsville, Missouri.
Routine dental examination and treatments are essential for high-quality horse care. To prevent potential problems, a horse's mouth should be examined at least once a year. I'm Dr. Chris Blevins, Equine Field Service Veterinarian at Kansas State University Veterinary Health Center. We can examine the mouth and provide a treatment plan to meet the needs of each client and their horse. Visit us at ksvhc.org, the Veterinary Health Center, to discover, to teach, to heal.
And welcome back to Better Horses. We are so glad you stayed with us. And, Merle, as I promised, this is nothing but professionals coming on board to our radio show, and they don't have to pay for it, and they get all this great information.
Yeah, it's great. And we've got a good segment lined up for you. This segment, though, I want to tell everybody is sponsored by Kleinschmidt's Western Wear, and you can look them up at www.kleinboot.com.
And coming on board, it is a 3-time NFR qualifier. We're going to talk about barrel racing, and all the way from Fort Hancock, Texas. I want to tell you, this girl is going to be a professional. Welcome aboard, Jena Bean. Jena, thank you for joining Better Horses.
Hi, thank y'all for having me. I'm excited.
Jena, I got to tell you, you have this resume of qualifying for the NFR and placed 5th out of 10 rounds in 2014. You won 9th round in 2015. Placed 4 rounds, tied in 10th round in 2016. You have a lifetime earnings of over $500,000, and you have been doing this for quite a long time. Give us your background and how you got started into barrel racing.
Well, first and foremost, I feel very blessed to be able to have my job as my passion, and I don't ever feel like I work because I just love what I do so much. And so I grew up on a ranch, and we basically just kind of rode our ranch horses. And I feel like I've been rodeoing and junior rodeoing and messing with horses ever since I was like 3 years old. So I feel like I've kind of grew up. It was my heritage. My parents always involved us in everything they did when it dealt with horses and the cattle and the ranch. And so I just carried that on to basically be my job, and something that has continued to allow me to stay in this industry as well as make a living at it.
If there's one thing everybody tries to explain to everybody is always watch the pros when you're going into a certain vertical, especially with barrel racing, and patterning your habits after the pros. I want to talk to you about good posture and good positioning and staying secure into that saddle, because this is a speed event. And what is your approach and in your seat position, and talking about your strength and your cardio and your focus when you're going into this type of specific skill?
Well, I agree that your strength and your cardio and your fitness is as important as anything in this sport, but I also think the mental aspect of it is probably one of the most important parts. First thing you have to do is you have to believe in yourself, and you have to have confidence in yourself. But you have to be humble enough to learn from others and to see your mistakes, own them, and try to make them better so that you can be better the next time you run down the alley. And I think all of that goes under one umbrella of the training, the strength training, the fitness training, the mental training. But then you have to have a partner that's trained as well. And I mean, in all aspects of training, they have to be trained to do their job. They also have to be fit enough to handle some of the obstacles of the ground and the setups and the altitudes and the heat and the cold, and you name all the variables that go against our horses as well while they're trying to do it. And we have to remember that they do it because they ask us. They don't really understand, that they're winning or they're losing. I feel like some that I've ridden, they want to win more than I do, but basically they do it because they love what they do, and I ask them to do it, and so they do their jobs at the best of their ability as well. And so I always, as a jockey, a trainer, an owner, of whatever you want to call it with my horse, they're part of my team. They're the biggest part of my team because they're the reason I'm there. And so if I don't feel like the conditions are right for my horse on that day, I've always been kind of known to either turn out or go slow or whatever the circumstances might be. I just try to put their safety and their health above everything else And, it's worked out for me. And the horses have always tried to, do the best they can pretty much every time they run down the alley, because they understand that I'm probably not going to try to put them in a position that's going to be hurtful or harmful to them. So I just feel like the relationship between you and your animal, when you're doing any kind of a discipline with a horse, has to be the first and foremost important thing in the whole scenario of it. But when I'm going into a barrel, I try to just pretty much sit square in my saddle. I tell people a lot of times that I help, I kind of have like an imaginary box around my saddle that I don't want to get my head or my feet out of in any direction. And it allows me enough to go a little bit forward when I leave a barrel, maybe tip a little bit back when I'm going in to try to push back on my horn and push down on my feet. And I would say my position is probably about 5 foot from a barrel going in, and I just try to basically just get a little bit of shape in their rib cage and in their shoulders going in. And then on the back side, I just want them to stick a hind leg in and then just drive out of it, and it just be a kind of a one smooth turn, one smooth motion around the turn, and to where, it's easier for them. They don't have to, put themselves and their bodies in a bad position to be vulnerable to bad ground. And it's worked out really good for me in the last, decade or so that I have ran barrels, just trying to perfect it. And to be honest with you, it's something that you work on every single day. Times are changing. The barrel times are getting faster. And so you're always having to keep up with the modern styles and the modern readings and all the stuff that goes along with trying to stay at the top. And, if you're not willing to stay up with them, then you just kind of get left behind. So I'm always watching the younger group or the new crowd coming in, or the new group of colts that are coming to the next year's futurities, to see where everybody's improving to make their times faster and their horses better.
Well, and Jana, you've talked a lot about what a barrel horse has to endure and the conditions. And a lot of our Better Horses listeners out there, I'm sure, would love to know, what qualities do you look for, like when you're breeding or selecting a horse for barrel racing?
Well, I like the Dash to Fame. It's a bloodline that fits my style and my personality really well. They're very aggressive. They like to do their job, and they want it probably as much as I do. And that's the bloodline I like. I like a bigger horse that's maybe a little bit longer than some people like. I like about a 15-3 to a 16-1 hand horse that is a little bit longer backed, that has a little bit longer stride. I seem to ride that style better. I can ride the smaller horses with the smaller strides, but if I was going to go pick one, it would probably be about a 15-3, about 1,200 pounds, and, look like a racehorse, but have maybe just a little more bottom to them.
Yeah.
We talked about training and improving your strength, but let's take that to the horses here. How much cardio do you actually get your horses in shape, and what kind of regiment do you put them into right before you go in to compete with?
Well, I've had a program that's worked for me for as long as I've been doing this, and I actually kind of borrowed it from a friend of mine, a fellow NFR qualifier, Molly Powell. She was at my house whenever she was rodeoing and before I ever got to really start. And I was quizzing her because I always like to learn from the ones that are better than me. But Molly was one that was, she could take different styles of horses and she could win on anything. So I tried to incorporate a lot of what her ideas were into what I kind of wanted for a horse. And I asked her, how do you keep your horses fit and ready when they're on the road and before they go on the road? And she just said she tried to leave home with them fatter in as good of lung condition as she could get them in, but then clearly on the road, she tried to keep them as fat and heavy as they could be, because they're always going to lose weight on the road. And then second of all, she said, when she got on the road and they got to running, then obviously their lung capacity stayed good. But how I incorporated that into my program is, I always have tried to keep my horses heavier. I like a thicker, heavier, horse rather than to be real light. And then I started loping them 7 minutes straight. And so I would do 3.5 minutes one way and then do kind of a lead change and crossover and do 3.5 minutes the other direction. And I loped 7 minutes, and it's been working for me, and it's kept their bodies in good condition, their lungs in great condition. And when I go to the road, they're ready, they're fit, and it seems very simple, but it's worked for me. And I like to try to keep things simple, because when you get it complicated, then to me it makes it too hard to if when I do sell a horse, to try to incorporate that into the next jockey's, regimen of how they do their work with the horse. And so it's pretty simple. My horses are pretty trained. They like their job, and I think when I do the 7 minutes, they don't get too tired, but they stay fit enough to feel good, but not too fit to where they're a little bit crazy or sore because I've overdone some stuff. So mine, I'll do, a few little drills, which incorporates 4 tires, and I'll do all rights and all lefts with them. And I usually kind of incorporate that into my 7 minutes because I just like to keep them fresh but fit.
Well said. National Finals Rodeo barrel racer Jena Bean from Fort Hancock, Texas. Jena, we want to thank you for joining us. And Jena, we want to have you back on Better Horses. We're going to talk more about barrel racing, and especially as we get closer to the National Finals Rodeo, and you can help us MC a couple of these things that are going on. And breeder and qualifier. Jena, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. Well, Merle, we got more Better Horses coming your way. I want everybody to stay put. We'll be right back right after these messages. I'm Ed Adams.
And I'm Merle Arvo.
Stay with us. And welcome back to Better Horses. Merle, just like we talked about barrel racing. We're going to have professional team roping, and we're going to have mounted shooting all in one show. This can't get any better than this, can it?
Action-packed, man. This is what you're here to hear.
Exactly right. Hey, this next segment, I want to let you know, is brought to you by Heritage Tractor John Deere. And if you're looking for a John Deere tractor in Kansas, Missouri, or Arkansas, I want you to stop, take a look at any construction or lawn and garden needs, and check out heritagetractor.com. All right. Now, Merle, here we go. We're going back into team roping. We're going to listen to these guys and what it takes to have a career earnings of over $1.5 million. Ryan Motes is coming on board, and I got to tell you, this guy is on fire. From 2024 highlights right now, he was in Fort Bend County Fair and Rodeo. He got first in there, and then last year in 2023, he just came out winning almost all the Stampedes, and over there in Utah and over there in Idaho Falls, done a great job. So I am really excited to have team roper Ryan Motes coming on board to Better Horses. Ryan, welcome aboard.
Hey, thanks guys for having me.
Ryan, you've been team roping for a while now. You were placed 21st in the world standings. Talk to me about how you got started. And this is something that, goes back as far as a lineage that your dad was also a pretty good roper.
Yeah, my family's kind of grew up in the rodeo, or I grew up in the rodeo business. Kind of my whole family had been in the rodeo business. My dad was a 1977 world champion team roper. And I kind of grew up a little bit in that. My grandpa, he was in the rodeo producing business, and he competed in the Madison Square Garden back in the days and stuff like that. And he was produced the NFR in Dallas, and then he was actually announcing it, the NFR in Oklahoma City, the year my dad won the world. So it kind of goes way back. Rodeo and did in my family. My stepdad's a fraternity champion and world champion cutter, so kind of the horse riding and the roping kind of is a little bit natural for me, or kind of grew up in it.
As you grow up, let's talk about training and I know as a kid, you were sitting there, you were going to Las Vegas as a child and as a 9-year-old and going off to camps and things of that sort. What are some of the basic fundamentals that you want to talk about when you're going into team roping or when you do any type of qualifying at the NFR? And you've done it, for so many times. Talk to us about your training and what you do as far as moving that forward.
For me, which most of my career has been based off good horses, and I think the one part that's missed out a little bit in anything is the horsemanship part of it. So, I feel like you're only as good, there's been the guys' careers are built on some guys have had careers that are built on one good horse and, maybe one or two really good horses. And in order to sustain a long career, the horsepower is key. And whether, if you can figure out how to keep those horses sound and working right over a long period of time, your success in the arena will be, spread out over many years versus just a handful of years on one good horse and not knowing how to either keep that horse working or find another one, knowing the right timing to figuring one out. So I'm big on obviously the rope handling ability and everything like that, but really just the rope handling ability will get you a little ways, but the business side of it, meaning both the economics of it and also figuring out what it takes to be able to make a living in the arena for quite some time. And, the rope handling ability obviously is the part that everybody sees, but the behind the scenes part of, whether you're training horses or whether you're trying to figure out the business on how to enter the rodeos and how to take care of the business side of it, it takes a lot of that. So not just the rope handling ability, but you can dang sure learn that from somebody that's been there, done that, and kind of have a inside edge on what you need to know right from the get-go as you're starting to get started.
Sure. And Ryan, you kind of alluded to it, but every rodeo season kind of has its ups and downs, and it's a season, it's a process. You can't just go off of one rodeo. How do you stay motivated, after challenging seasons?
You just kind of have to understand where you're at. And I think, when you're young in any sport, whether you're a high school football player, if you go to a D1 school, you were normally the best player on your high school football team, at least one of the best. And it's a lot that way with roping. So, any form of rodeo, the further you get rolling with it, the better people get. And you'll see all of a sudden it's eye-opening what a good D1 player, some of them are obviously great, but, when they get into the NFL or something like that, and everybody's big and everybody's good, and then they're used to being the better one of the team. And I think just going forward and figuring out that you're not always going to win, because a lot of times, whether you're the best high school guy in your region or in your state or whatever, and you kind of get used to winning all the time, and whether you even hit college and start that same way, but just understanding the fact that when you're first starting out, you think you're going to win all the time, and you're not. And, people let the highs and lows kind of bother them too much. And the biggest thing is, it's like you said, it's a long season. If in the team roping, you go 75 rodeos, if you go to 75 rodeos up the year, you're more or less in a sense, you there's a certain amount you're going to have to win. This year, it looks like it's probably going to take about 100,000 to make the NFR and the team roping. So it's not necessarily about where you are week to week. You're going to have 2 or 3 bad weeks, and just knowing that it's going to get better. And sometimes when you're younger, you're not used to it. If you're home amateur rodeo and you get to come home and practice and do a bunch, and when you're gone rodeoing full time, you kind of just have to mentally prepare yourself for losing and know that going forward, you're going to win again, but if you beat yourself up over it or get too caught up on the highs and lows of it, you'll definitely stay in your slump a little bit longer, instead of actually just going back to the basics and focusing on how to get through it.
I like the idea that you talked about the team. Now, I know you wrote behind Coleman Proctor. Also, we'll give you the episode in which we talked to Coleman too. Talk to me about team. You are a healer, and what do you look for? How do you guys synchronize, and how do you keep that synergy going?
As you get to doing it longer and longer, you kind of develop kind of a feel of what works for you. Typically speaking, there's some guys that whether if a header is kind of more of a horseman and runs in there close and ropes, typically you'll see that paired with somebody that kind of ropes a little bit more aggressive, and a healer that ropes a little more aggressive. And then you'll also see the opposite of that, which is the more aggressive header paired with a more consistent healer, whether that be more of a veteran healer or wherever it may be. As time goes on, the very best teams, they've been able to go both ways. And as far as if the header's aggressive, the healer's able to make sure they catch. And if the header needs to take an extra swing or two, the header can take another swing or two, set it up good, and the healer's able to go, be a little more aggressive, be the more aggressive one. And then you've seen, this year we've seen there's been teams, Caleb and Junior, we saw Speedy and Rich do it forever, and Jake and Clay did it forever. And, kind of current times is, Caleb Driggerson Jr. is probably the best team we've got out there now. And Junior's known for being aggressive, but if Caleb's aggressive, Junior's able to make sure he catches one and it stays in it. And so for me, kind of knowing your role and understanding where it fits, and that doesn't, anybody that's multidimensional, they make them hard to beat. I said it's the equivalent of if you can rope aggressive and be consistent when you need to, it's the end all. It's kind of like trying to guard Mahomes. If you blitz him, he's going to throw it over your head, and if you stay back on him, he's going to run it right through the middle of you. And those kind of deals, when you have the rope handling ability and you have whether that's the athletic ability, and then you pair that with consistency or being able to have a game plan and execute a solid game plan, man, it makes them hard to beat. So for kids, that's what I tell them, the mental part of it and just being consistent and kind of knowing your role. Not knowing your role, knowing how to handle the pressure, and just sometimes we just have to catch and sometimes we have to be more aggressive, and knowing that sometimes we've seen it with every sport, the aggressive part, some of the guys that are really aggressive, when they just need to make sure not screw up, they still, they stay aggressive and they don't have that second aspect to them where they can just back off and make sure. And so the better teams, like I said, Coleman and I felt like we had the ability to kind of go either way. If he went aggressive, I could slow down. I had great luck with Aronson and Jenny. We kind of were the same style. When it was able to be fast, it was able to be fast. And when we needed to catch, we were able to slow down and catch. And I feel like that's where the teams the people that can make a living for a long time, that they sustain that. And, there's all kinds of different ways of doing it, but being able to win and catch consistently is the most important, no matter how you do it.
Ryan, I'm going to break this down real quickly. And for our novices out there, and we have a lot of these conversations, but going to a professional question, this is going to be great. I won't talk a lot about gear, but I do want to talk to you about ropes. And it gets so confusing out there for novices on, soft, medium, different lengths.
Yeah.
What kind of strands do you use, and what type of core materials do you like to use as a professional, just to get you through? And how often do you use your rope, and when do you pitch it?
I use classic ropes. I have forever. I feel like they by far are the best heel ropes out there on the planet, the best ropes on the planet, but by far, they have the majority of the best healers in the world use the classics. I've always been a little more on the limber end of some people. When I was younger, I used to use them pretty stiff, and I've kind of backed off. For me, I use a medium, 35-foot medium. I use the classic heat is what I use, the red rope.
Okay.
I grew up, I used the power lines for a long time in a medium or a hard medium, and they're a little bigger, a little heavier. I think it's probably maybe the best rope Classic makes, but I like the heat's almost just as good. And the power lines, as I've gotten a little older and my shoulders gotten a little even older than me, I feel like the little lighter the heats. I've always liked them. I've used them, throughout my career back and forth, but they seem to fit me the best. But as soon as they get a bad kink in them or a bad spot in them, man, I'm done with it. It's not a practice rope. If it's got a burnt coil or something like that, man, ropes seem like they're expensive, but fingers are more expensive. So I'm done with it as soon as it's kind of got a crappy spot in it. I'm done with it. But you might get 100 or plus runs out of one, but maybe not full competition runs. And in the summer when we've rodeoed, I've had good summers, and I've used the same rope every time. But you run one steer and put it back in the bag and pick it back up either later that day or tomorrow. And, it's kind of recovered and bounced back. And, I've used ropes like that for weeks and weeks at a time. And they stayed feeling good, but it wasn't just super hot, super runs in a row, a lot of runs in a row. But I tell people, you want to use, I heard when I was a kid, use the stiffest rope you can handle. And I think just because you can swing it and make it go around your head doesn't actually mean you can control it, I guess. Use the stiffest rope you can control is kind of the way. And so, generally speaking, for the novice person, I tell them, get you an extra soft or a soft head rope, and don't get nothing too big, too stiff, too fancy, but an extra soft's a great starter. And for a healer, I said, a medium soft to a medium heel rope is plenty good. If you get limber than that, sometimes they'll close up a little on a guy. And if you get firmer than that, it seems like it takes too much of your body to swing it instead of just actually having control of it. You can swing it, but you really can't control it.
That's perfect. If you're just joining us, we're talking to Ryan Motes, professional team roper. Ryan, we want to thank you for coming on Better Horses. We want to wish you all the luck this year, and hope to see you at the end of the year. And by all means, we'd love to have you come back.
Perfect. Thank you, guys.
All right. Appreciate it. Hey, Merle, we're going to have more Better Horses coming your way. We're going to move over from team roping over to mounted shooting. So we want everybody to stay with us. I'm Ed Adams.
I'm Merle Arbo.
And we'll be right back right after these messages.
Hi, I'm Dr. Dylan Luter, a specialist in equine performance medicine at the Kansas State University Veterinary Health Center. Our new service focuses on lameness diagnosis, advanced imaging, physical therapy, and regenerative medicine for horses with injuries preventing them from performing at their best. We can treat a variety of conditions and design a customized rehabilitation plan to meet the needs of each client and their horse. Visit us at ksvhc.org, the Veterinary Health Center, to discover, to teach, to heal.
Hi, I'm Tommy with Heritage Tractor. Whether you're looking to maintain your yard or your whole ranching operation, Heritage Tractor has John Deere mower and tractor packages that make work fly by. With a variety of horsepower and attachment configurations, we have a package to best fit your needs and budget. To learn more about these exclusive packages, visit us in store or online at heritagetractor.com.
Legendary products, extraordinary service. That's our heritage.
Established in 1956, the Pinto Horse Association of America was formed to welcome all types of equines and maintain their show records and pedigrees. PTHA currently has over 88,000 members with 157,000 registered pintos. There are currently 3 separate registries: the Color Registry, the Solid Registry, and the Long Ear Registry. We welcome all levels of competition within a family-friendly environment. Become a member, register, and add value to your horse. For more information, check out the website pintoworld.com.
Get quality you can stand on. Hoof Grip is the proprietary formula that provides shock absorption for your animals with no ice buildup, slipping, cracking, or sogginess, making it the safest, most comfortable, and maintenance-free flooring on the market. Hoof Grip installs quickly and easily over existing surfaces, is easy to clean, and withstands extreme heat or cold. From vet offices to barns, wash racks to trailers and more. Visit hoofgrip.com to find a dealer in your area today.
We're here for the hardworking, the resilient. We're for the people who measure their days by what needs to get done, not by hours. Where kids learn responsibility at a young age and generations work side by side. Where work doesn't pause for holidays or bad weather. It just gets harder. Where value and hard work means more than the clothes you wear. We're Kleinschmidt's Western Store, Higginsville, Missouri.
It's time to go with United Mosquito and Fly Control's premier fly system for fly control in your barn, providing relief for horses from the stress of fighting flies, and also makes the barn more pleasant for everyone in the barn. Easy, effective, and safe. With United Mosquito and Fly Control, we provide a full service. You as the barn owner don't have to do anything. We go everywhere and take care of everything with our friendly fast service. Call today at 913-558-3814 or email Paul at unitedmosquito.com.
And welcome back to Better Horses. You know, Merle, we talked about it. We just got done talking with team roping, and then we've also had, barrel racing. You know, naturally, the next step is when we're talking speed events, we got to get into mounted shooting.
Yeah. You know, this is a show that's got a little need for speed in it, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's like, and you know what? World champion Dee Chapman is going to come on board, and she can deliver a pitch perfect run. And it's a very exciting point, or sport rather, and talking about cowboy mounted shooting. That's what we're going to be talking about. And the one who can give it to us is going to be Dee Chapman, and she's a professional. Dee, welcome to Better Horses.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
You know, I'm glad you're on board because I've got to meet you at the Missouri State Fair. I've always enjoyed watching you on the mounted shooting, and you just let our listening audience know you're at the Kansas State Fair right now competing, and we want to talk about cowboy mounted shooting. And if you hear explosions and gunfire, I want my audience just to relax. That's all us doing that mounted shooting. And I got to tell you, when you started, I know you've been riding since you were a child, but I think, did you get into barrel racing first? I know they didn't put a gun in your hand when you first started horseback riding.
Right. No, I grew up in the 4-H program, and I rode with the Pikes Peak Rangerettes drill team as a teenager. I did quite a bit of showing. After college, I sort of tried my hat at reining and loved it, but I had a barrel racing coach that was hosting reining clinics at her house, and so then I signed up for clinics with her, and the rest is history. I love the speed. So we went from barrel racing, and I got my pro card barrel racing and competed in pro rodeo events, and my husband was into shooting, and this sport brought it all together.
For our audience that are not familiar with the sport, and it's getting very, very popular, but cowboy mounted shooting is a timed event, and you're wear balloons and targets, and you shoot maneuvering a course in the arena, and it changes all the time, but the shooter shoots blanks at 45 single action caliber revolver pistol. And Dee, we want to talk to you about governing the Cowboy Mounted Shooting Association. The organization is getting very popular. This sport's getting very popular. So talk to us about teaching your horse, because as soon as you say, hey, I'm going to shoot off this horse, there's a lot of training and there's a lot of prep work you got to do before you introduce your horse to a gun.
That's the truth. And some horses take to it better than others. The saying we have in this sport is that you can shoot off any horse once, and then the horse knows what happens before what happens, as Tom Dorrance used to say. And the next time you pull the hammer back, it means a little something different than the first time, and things don't always go as planned. If you have a coach that can help get you into the sport, that's always a good way to go. There are lots of great clinicians across the country that travel and host events. And then the biggest thing, I think, is that you don't make the shooting about the horse. We don't look at the horse and say, are you going to be okay with this? Because if we leave it to them to decide, they might choose differently than we hope. So I think it's important that our horses learn to do their job, and the shooting will happen while they're doing their job. And that seems to be the best approach for myself, bringing new horses into the sport. There's other people that spend a lot of time gun breaking their horse where they just don't care. I can tell you, if we're up in the mountains and I shot off a gun randomly, my horses would probably jump and spook like any other horse. They're not necessarily gun broke. They just do their job.
And Dee, for those of our listeners out there, Better Horses listeners, that may not be familiar with the sport of cowboy mounted shooting, can you kind of give us a little breakdown and some of the intricacies that are a little different than barrel racing per se?
Sure. Similar to barrel racing, we have an electric eye that starts and stops your time. And we've got several patterns. I think there are 80 in the pattern book. Patterns are drawn at random. All of the courses that we run have 10 balloons. So you would shoot your first 5 targets with your first gun, holster, draw your second gun, and engage the second 5 targets with your second gun. Most of the patterns have what we refer to as a rundown. And the rundown just means that your last 5 targets are in a straight row, where the third barrel would be in barrel racing. You would round a barrel and let your horse roll through the rundown and shoot those fast 5 targets. The other 5 balloons are set up in different patterns, different ways. And there are a few patterns that don't have rundowns, or more circle patterns, or have some different looks to them. But there's a lot of horsemanship involved. They need the handle, perhaps, of a reiner with the speed of a barrel horse, and put that together.
And if you're just joining us, we're talking to Dee Chapman, and she's with Cowboy Mounted Shooting Professional, and she's been shooting for a long time. And Dee, when you talk about your patterns and you're talking about the discipline, we wanted to talk about the CMSA, and that's a Cowboy Mounted Shooting Association. But there's more than one organization out there. And can you talk about the type of levels that you have to have, and how do you move up on each level when you're shooting?
Sure. Our sport is really neat because we have a place for kids, we have a place for adults, we have a place for seniors. We have 6 divisions. Everybody starts as a level 1 shooter when they're actually shooting. The kids can do it without shooting guns off their horses. Kids 10 and under ride the patterns for time, and they can choose to carry guns or not, but they're not ever going to fire their guns. And then when kids are 11 and 12, they do carry guns, and they can be replicas, they can be actual guns, and they have to engage the targets and point at the targets as if they were shooting them, and they're still competing for time. And then once a competitor turns 12, they have the option of going to the shooting class. And the shooting classes start with level 1. When you get qualified wins, if you have enough people in your class, you get a win. You can move up to a 2, then to a 3, then to a 4, and all the way up to 6. It's really great. Then with the senior classes, they also have 1 through 6. So there are lots of divisions. There are 24 classes with the Wranglers, and everybody has a place to compete and grow within our sport.
This is one sport that really offers a lot of disciplines, but more importantly, a lot of breeds. Can you talk to us about the best breed out there? And as when we say a lot of breeds, there's a lot of breeds that go out and try this.
My preference is the American Quarter Horse. We also see American Paint horses, but the neat thing about our sport is that everybody comes from different backgrounds. We don't have a lot of third generation mounted shooters out there doing it, and so sometimes we'll see some gaited horses, and some of them do quite well in the sport. You'll see some draft classes. We see some really interesting horses in our sport. But I think when it comes down to the nuts and bolts and really getting a run done, most people are going to go to the quarter horse.
And for everybody just listening in, we're talking to Dee Chapman, who is a professional cowboy mounted shooting. And if I wanted to get Merle to shoot off his horse from this point, as you mentioned, there are a lot of classes that we want to go for, but there is something. You are traveling, you're at the Kansas State Fair right now. I notice a lot of the state fairs are putting on the mounted shooting, and this is becoming a pretty popular sport. But if you wanted to get into it for the very first time, what would you recommend, Dee? How would somebody get started if they've never done this before?
Well, I think one of the neat things is I'm sitting here talking to you. My run is coming up. They just had to roll someone ahead of me. But when I look around at the horses, that's the answer to me, is that the shooting is going on, and there's a lot of percussion from the shots being blanks. And when I look around, there are 50 horses here that just don't care that the shooting's going on. And that's a great place to bring a new horse and hang out with your friends that are shooting and have them around it. At smaller practices and competitions, they'll set balloons on horseback. And that's another good place. Give your horse something to do and replace the balloon targets in between riders. And then I think it's time to get with a clinician and acclimate your horse and learn some tools. And if you're not sure if you want to get started, don't, because once you do, you will. You'll be hooked. It's the worst drug out there. It's very addictive.
We heard it was very addicting. Okay, so if you're hearing the gunfire in the background to our listening audience, we have Dee Chapman is also at the Kansas State Fair, and she's about to go down the ring right now to shoot her pattern. Dee, we want to thank you for joining us. I know this was a call in, and we appreciate all the information you gave us on cowboy mounted shooting.
Thank you so much. I hope we draw some more people to our awesome sport.
There you go. And good luck.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay. That was Dee Chapman. Merle, I think this was a lot of fun. And we didn't mention it, but we are going to mention it. She was at the Kansas State Fair. And this segment was brought to you by the Kansas State University College of Veterinary Medicine. And how convenient that is to have the College State right there and the University of College of Veterinary Medicine also located right there.
Yeah, if your horse has an issue, you're pretty close.
So that was great. Dee Chapman and Cowboy Mounted Shooting Association. It is a fun sport. We've tried it. It is something, to her point, Merle, it is very, very addicting. And I got to tell you, this has been just one of the greatest shows we've had. 3 professional disciplines. We've had barrel racing, we've had team roping, and mounted shooting. And what a great joy to have those professionals come on board.
Yeah, and you mentioned it too, but the mounted shooting is really growing. I can't believe, and it's kind of funny because we talked to Ryan about how he has a lineage, like his grandpa did it, and a stock contractor, and his dad was a world champion, and she's like, no, this is just something new and growing. There's not third generation mounted shooters out there,
and I think it's going to continue to grow. So, but you know what? I got to tell you, I want to thank everybody for joining our show, and I want to thank all of our radio listeners out there. And if you ever want to see any of our other shows that we have on board, just to take a look at wherever you get your podcast, search for Better Horses and listen to all of our episodes.
And don't forget our newspapers coming out 5 times a year. We've got a lot of great tips and tricks for horses and riders alike.
We got the fall issue coming right out too, and that's going to be great. But we're also going to complement that with our own TV show. Better Horses is also on RFD, the Cowboy Channel, and streaming on Equus TV. And Merle, if they miss a show, they can go on our YouTube channel and just check out all our episodes from there.
I was actually on that today, and this is a note for our listeners that we did that episode with Coleman, and that was May 19th. That was the May 19th episode.
Yeah.
We had Coleman Proctor on there. So if you are still listening, that's where you can find the Coleman Proctor interview at.
Also another header in the team roping. We want to give special thanks to all our radio producer, Brianna Johnson. Appreciate everything she does. And, we also want to give a shout out to producer Kelly Creech. And naturally, all our sponsors. Well, Merle, I want to thank you for joining me. This wraps it up for this week. Nothing but talking about horses, one of the best times I have all week long. But more importantly to you, we want you all to be good buckaroos and buckarettes. Mind your mom and dads and be brave, but don't take any chances out there. Until next time, I'm Ed Adams.
And I'm Merle Arbo.
Happy trails, and always ride for the brand.